Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lyric Podcast. I'm Ryan, also known as Comic Stan. I love comic books. My co-host loves regular books. I'm going to retake that one.
No, you're not allowed.
Hello and welcome back to the Comic Lyric Podcast, where we comically and literally look at comic books. I'm Ryan, also known as Comic Stan. I love comic books, but my co-host loves regular books, but I make him read them anyway. And with me, as always, is my aforementioned appetizing co-host, it's Jamie.
I do look particularly yummy today.
I mean, you always look a dish, shall we say.
The dog was well interested.
The dog thinks everyone has food because he knows they're the carriers of food.
I also smell like dog right now.
I have no response to that whatsoever.
I've just been walking one.
That's fine. Yeah, I know. We always say like, yeah, sure. You do.
Like the ones at home are notably larger, and so they jump up at me.
And then they cover you in that dog pheromone, and then you're part of the pack.
Literally. I honestly think that's what's going on a lot of the time.
Whether intentionally or unintentionally, I think.
They're the type of breed where you come in and they have to give you a thorough examination. Like they have to have a good sniff around you to be like, yeah, he cool.
Oh,
and
yeah,
like,
you got to put that hand out for a little tester, don't you?
Well, it's the livestock guardian in them. So when I come in, they're like, right, where have you been? What's going on? Are you bringing anything unsavory with you? And so all three of them just come and have like a proper good sniff.
I think it's just their way of interacting with you once you've come back, you know?
Yeah,
they
it's
sniff
nice.
each other. That's the
Isn't
information.
It nice though when you go somewhere and then they're my girlfriend's dogs, they're not my dogs, but I go somewhere.
Which girlfriend is this? Call back.
Do you know, I actually told her about it yesterday.
Pre-warning you,
Yeah.
you might hear something on.
And she was like, you know, I'd have found it funny. And I'm like, yeah, but I'd like you to know.
You spoiled the joke for her.
Well, I was getting ahead of it so that, well, I mean, I had to say it to both of them in fairness, but
You're going to hear some unsavory things about me. but
I promise when he said which girlfriend, he definitely meant you, not the other one.
You're the main one.
Yeah.
Well, nice. I marked that for the best of at the end of the year, just under Jamie's, was it polygamy? Is that it?
Yes.
Is that the word? Yeah, I'm good with words. Speaking of words...
Well, no, it's not polygamy unless you're married. It's polyamory. And then if you're married to multiple people, it's polygamy.
Well, you would know. Anyway, as you see in this week's title, we're covering, going back in time a little bit to the far-off land of 2009, actually, to a comic book that was one of my kind of favorites, but I hadn't thought about it for a while, because it's kind of, you know, those non-superhero ones, they're kind of almost isolated a little bit.
Yes.
But this one kind of came to mind. I thought we're doing a lot of superhero stuff. We've just done a bunch. We're going to do Captain America next week. So maybe like a non-superhero break, especially for you. And
yes.
I was thinking, what's the non-superhero ones? And you go to, you know, The Walking Dead and see the big ones. I should know this because I know comic books, but you know when you're asked to think of something on the spot and you can't think of it. Anyway, I remembered Chew, which was a 2009 series that is very interesting.
Well, originally we were going to do something else. And he went, oh, we could do this one. And I was like, well, I've already started reading the other one now. And then I looked at the first page of this and went, this looks more interesting.
It's a very fun comic. And it's one that it's really hard to describe in the sense that it's got a lot of ideas that shouldn't seemingly work together or work as well as they do.
It's got a fun core concept.
But I think, and the execution is like very of its style as well. Like there's no other comic book like it, at least none that I've read. And I think it's one that I would, if people haven't heard of it or they haven't read it, I'm hoping they'll kind of take away to like check it out after listening to this if they haven't already.
Yeah, it would get my recommendation, I think.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. The highest recommendation, a yawning yes.
Yeah, I mean... I don't give my recommendation quite as loosely as you do.
Well, you know, some of us are just more enthusiastic about the medium, I guess.
Yes, very much so.
Well, let's get started with some comic book credits, as we always do. As I said, it was 2009. Actually ran for 7 years to 2016 for 60 issues. Yeah. We're only covering the first 5, the first arc, the first story arc that happens. And it's barely, like, to call it a story arc is not... It's not a traditional story arc. Like, it's not like a superhero, like, ooh, there's a baddie. We'll fight him in 5 issues, and then we'll start the next one.
It kind of is.
But it's a lot less dedicated each issue to...
It's almost kind of exactly that.
Okay, let's get into that, because I think that's an interesting topic. But just to get across, the writer is John Layman, and with art by Rob Guillory. And, as I said, Image comic as well, so very good for the non-superhero stuff. And yeah, let's go overall broad thoughts before we get into specifics. What do you mean by what I mean by it doesn't feel like a traditional story arc of like a superhero comic is normally it's like we've got to deal with this bad guy and it's every issue is that and you can see the kind of arc leading up to it. Whereas this one, I feel like I'm rereading it, but I feel like reading it now, I don't know necessarily what is going to happen next. Did you not get that sense?
Well, we meet a character at the start who is set up to be an antagonist, and then he becomes the guy's partner for a bit, but then it turns out that he's ultimately going to be the antagonist for the rest of the series, right? That's very typically comic book.
I would say...
With a misdirect, but it's still quite...
I would say your prediction past it is not entirely correct nor incorrect, as best as I can give in a non-spoiler way. It does some interesting stuff with it.
I think I've called it.
No. I'll tell you now, you haven't. As someone who's read it, no, you're wrong. I was trying to give you a little bit of leeway because it does play with the conventions of that a bit, but it's not full on like, well, he's the bad guy now, and we'll have a big fight at issue 60 and then the series will end. Like, it's not that at all.
I mean, it definitely is setting that up.
No, not even. It's not at all.
The last line of that 5th issue... Where are we?
We should probably tell people if they haven't read it what the general plot of this comic book is actually about.
The last line is, one will die and the other will dine on the flesh of his enemy.
Yeah, that's just like that character talks like that. Like that's his narration, isn't it?
I don't know whose narration it is. It's the Yellow Box narration.
All right.
It's the narrator's narration.
I will say,
it's the omniscient narrator who does having
read it years ago, I think that is a fun, clever, like, it's not how it portrays it now is not how it actually happens later. You know, that kind of thing where it's like, it was technically correct, but it wasn't actually like that, if you know what I mean. And the fact that it's all about dining on the flesh of the other, blah, blah, blah. And again, for anyone who doesn't know, would you like to give a brief overview of the story?
Oui, chef.
Okay.
We are presented with a quasi-dystopian American future whereby...
Different to the current dystopian present.
Oh, I mean, the actual dystopian present in America is thoroughly terrifying. If you've not been keeping up with what's going on in America right now, you should definitely start boarding your fucking windows up if you live there.
Okay, what about the fictional dystopian
Right,
America?
fictional you brought it up. No. I was gonna glide over it, blissfully not thinking about it.
I was just trying to make a joke.
It's not funny. It's Nazism.
Trying to keep it light.
No, it's Nazism. It's terrifying. Right, so, Chew. Chew.
Yes.
We are in a dystopian version of America.
Specifically fictional. Gotta make that
Specifically
distinction.
fictional, whereby avian flu has caused them to ban chicken and all other waterfowl and poultry. And so there is now a thriving black market for chicken. We meet a detective whose name is Chew.
Very fun little Marvel DC thing, isn't it? What are the odds? Who
has a magical power whereby eating something causes him to understand its properties and its history.
Very psychic-esque kind of power.
Yeah. So he gets called on by the FDA, who are now the most powerful organization in America, to solve murders by eating bits of the bodies.
Yep. Pretty much, in a nutshell.
He meets another... Oh, well, there's a name for them. Cybergraph.
Yeah.
Cybergraph. He meets another Cybergraph.
I have Cybo or Cybo, because it's written, we don't know.
Fuck it. We'll pick one. Cybergraph.
Sure.
Who is also working for the FDA, who is the coolest human being I've ever met. He's fucking awesome.
Great character.
He's huge.
Mason Savoy?
Mason Savoy.
Yeah.
He is big. He dresses like he's from a Guy Ritchie film. He looks like Brian Blessed, and he talks like me.
I would say he's even more eloquent than you.
Yeah, well, he certainly has...
Sounds posher.
Yeah, the depths of his vocabulary are places that I purposefully wouldn't go to.
And his character's it's over the top purposefully.
Yes, but they do a really good job of it because... Oftentimes, when you see a character in a comic book and they want him to appear eloquent, he's just wordy. And actually, you look at the way that they structure sentences and it's wholly unpleasing. Whereas with Mason, the way that the manner in which he constructs sentences is pleasing. The use of more heterodox pieces of vocabulary are really well placed. I think he did a good job.
It's what you're talking about, I think, with when it's done worse is when they've just literally run text through a thesaurus, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereas this is very much every word intentionally used, and the whole sentence, it's got a cadence to it as well.
He's almost Waldinian in his levels of articulacy. He's very articulate. He was written by an articulate person, clearly.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And yeah, we see Chew getting used to having to chew through body parts and moldy dogs and all manner of rank things, all in the name of ending the American chicken black market and solving murders.
Yep, that's totally the main plot. What I especially like about this whole thing, which we'll get into more detail, I like that there's these little hints of this bigger thing going on as well. But before we get into the main nitty-gritty of the story, what do you think of this art style? Starting with the arting.
Yeah, right. Okay. I'm conflicted.
I kind of agree. I like it, but when I actually break it down, it's kind of then like deciding if these are good or bad creative choices.
Yeah.
I like the whole style because it's very unique feeling.
Yeah.
It gives everything a kind of, again, cartoon is a bad word to use for this because that's just anything. It's all animation. Cartoons. But it feels like a kind of bit wacky, bit surrealist, a bit like the body proportions was something I was going to talk about, because I know you don't like it in more things that attempt to be more realistic looking, but this is so far from that. So I was wondering how you felt about that.
To be clear, I liked it. In a way, put me in mind of some of the stuff that you see in Walking Dead.
Yeah. Especially the violence and the gore and like the teeth.
Less
bite marks.
Less so the actual comic, but the art style of the Walking Dead covers was always very different to the art within.
Yeah.
And this whole art style really reminded me of the style that they used for the Walking Dead covers.
Yeah.
Which I always really liked.
I'm now thinking of that first one where Rick Grimes was like really skinny in it.
Yeah.
And then when you actually read it, he's like more normal proportioned.
Yeah. The Walking Dead covers had a very graphic art style, and this is not dissimilar to that. I think it was a bold choice. I think, again, we've observed this a little bit of late, where comics that have a really strong core I don't want to call it a gimmick,
like a flagship style almost.
No. Stop trying to preempt me. Stop interrupting me. I'm having a thought.
I'll leave in all the long silences and add more just to get the point across.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm thinking. I'm trying my best here.
All right.
No, comics that have a really strong core concept. So like Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, this can then get away with having more out there art styles because you're not expecting a super grounded story. And so actually the art style in this, I think, is a nice complement to the story. I really like the way that things are drawn, despite the fact that I don't like the way that things are drawn.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like I like I say, I enjoy it as I'm going, and I'm liking looking at it. I'm like enjoying the art. But then when you try and break it down a little bit, you go, how is this? That shouldn't work as good as it does.
Yeah, and there are some really fun inconsistencies. So when he's at that newspaper, his handgun, which has hitherto been a normal-sized handgun, is now bigger than his head. And I don't know why the artist did that. It's because they needed to emphasize the fact that he was holding a gun, and it was quite the panel was drawn at a distance, right? And so they either had the gun look small and silly and maybe not be noticed, or they drew the fucking thing as big as his head for a panel. And so these are the inconsistencies that often I would really rally against. And I would say, this is just terrible art. If you are using art to tell a story, it needs to have a certain level of consistency. And then I look at this and go, fuck it, it's kind of cool.
I would say
it's kind of cool. It's cool.
Yeah, I've made the argument before when we've had little debate about, body proportions and consistency or lack thereof or whatever. I've made the argument before that sometimes a style that style enforces that inconsistency because it's part of the whole vibe of
it becomes consistently inconsistent.
Yes, and this is probably one of the biggest piece of examples I could use for that, because this is one of the biggest examples I can use for that, because it's just a fun visual display of the story. So when it does those, you can tell it's not adhering to those consistencies as much. And as well, when you've got like one character whose torso is like the size of 4 people, but they've still got thin arms and legs, and then you've got the main character Chu, who's ridiculously skinny compared to everyone else. And then as you'll find out later, there's like, when you read past this, there's even more like characters with weird kind of body proportions and stuff. This is what I mean. This is as close as I can get describing, when I describe something that's cartoony, this is that. Like it's to tell the story, but it's also making the art as fun as possible, and it's disregarding, like, again, consistency in size and proportion and all that bollocks.
So one of the things that is really important to cartoonists is silhouette.
Right.
We've never talked about this. Maybe we have, maybe we haven't. When you are drawing, particularly in character design, when you're drawing a character, it's really important that they're recognizable in silhouette. One of the reasons that Batman is so successful. One of the reasons that Batman is such a successful piece of design, because Batman is instantly recognizable in silhouette. Yeah. And they do it all the fucking time.
And you've said this, I don't think you've used the word silhouette before, but you have said about, not necessarily about outline, but just generally if a character recognizable as soon as you see them. Yeah. You don't have to spend time being like, hang on, which one is that? That's a blonde one. The other one I'm thinking of is brunette. Like, you don't have to worry about details so much.
And so creating a character in cartoon styles that's instantly recognizable by silhouette is really important. And I can think of a number of cartoon characters that you can do that with.
I'd say probably most of them even.
Well, all of The Simpsons.
Yeah. All of Futurama, all of Family Guy.
Futurama less so, Family Guy less so. But if you looked at silhouettes of Homer, Marge, Bart and Lisa, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Johnny Bravo, I think, is an excellent example. Phineas and Ferb are good examples.
A lot of the Looney Tunes, back in the originals.
A lot of the Looney Tunes are in...
even the original Disney characters.
Yes, yeah. And
that's
then
why I put a bow on Minnie Mouse to be like, that's you can tell it's the girl.
Yeah, because it made her silhouette more interesting. Yeah. Mason is instantly recognizable in silhouette. That character has a fantastic silhouette, even down to the way that his hat sits on his head.
And you can't see his eyes.
Yeah, I just think that character would look good in silhouette. And so on that level, I think that it's a successful enough piece of character design that I'm willing to forgive the fact that in a lot of places it's a bit janky.
I think janky, when we get to using like terms like that, it's harder to apply them to this kind of style.
Well, yeah, it is.
Because it's all, you could describe it as all jank, like, and that's the intention almost. I do think when you're pointing out about Mason and his silhouette, it is kind of art and story kind of hand in hand, because all the silhouettes tell you a lot about the characters before you even actually know anything about them. Yeah. So Chew is very skinny, and then you find out he
doesn't eat.
Yeah, well, that, yeah. But also personality-wise, he's very disconnected from everyone. He's not like overly bravado or confident or charismatic or anything like that. So his thin silhouette is that of someone who is kind of almost shying away from the world a little bit.
Yeah.
You've got his partner, his first partner, what's his name? Colby, who is like buff and muscled and bit like the big Johnny Bravo head and the big hair. And then Mason, as soon as he comes in, you think you've seen one buff character in his first partner, then you see Mason and he's literally like taking up the room.
He's larger than life.
And that is that visual art style being like, this is a really important character.
Have you noticed though that sometimes Mason gets bigger than Chew relatively?
Yeah, when he's standing next to him, like...
No. Like, look, Mason's hand there is about the same size as Chew's entire torso.
Yeah.
But then 2 panels later, his hands are the same size as Chew's hands nearly.
Yeah.
And it's that level of it, that is those inconsistencies that I would call jank.
Right.
So you've got this core character design, right? Mason is big. Has a big, interesting silhouette, he's big. But the fact that then sometimes he's bigger relative to Chew than he should be, to me is a level of inconsistency. And that's what I mean by jank. Is I'm not bothered by the fact that Mason is that much bigger than Chew. I'm like, in this fucking universe, wherever we are, he is that much bigger. It's the fact that sometimes he is an order of magnitude bigger than he is at other times. And I get that for that panel in that moment, it makes so much sense for he's backhanding Chew away from him. It makes so much sense for him to be as vast as he is. And I'm okay with that, Jank, because it fits what's going on. But it's a level of inconsistency, isn't it? It has an internal inconsistency.
I would say it's only inconsistent if you expect their proportions to be the same all the way through. But this comic, in that example you've just shown, establishes that we are going to change things, make things bigger or smaller in context to the story, like the action that's happening. Like, it's telling you that, like, this is how we're doing it. And you can still not like it for that. But I think to call it inconsistency is to be like, well, we didn't set the expectation that they were going to look the same all the way through anyway. Or in panel to panel.
But you would expect, wouldn't you?
No, not necessarily. And that might be the core of our difference in that kind of thing. And like I said earlier, when something is trying to look realistic, like, again, like it is proportionate most of the time, and then it does something weird. Classic example, Amazing Spider-Man #5, when his head is just in a weird shape.
Yeah.
They hadn't established that at all in the style beforehand. So when they did it, it's especially jarring because you're like, hang on, we're not doing that. Why are we doing this for this one panel? Whereas in Chew, and again, that, like the gun, when he pulls out the gun, it's kind of telling you, we're going to make things bigger, we're going to ridiculously overemphasize things in context with what's happening. So when he pulls out his gun, in that moment, it's a panel where he's drawing it on someone.
Yeah.
So the emphasis is on the gun, and it's made bigger to be like, he's pulled a weapon out on this other character. And Mason there, as you say, he's slapping away Chew, and it's a big thing. Because it's not just he's like swatting a fly near him, whatever. It's a big story beat that he's pushing him away. So I think that's the comic's way of telling you, you know when something's significant because we're gonna make a body part bigger.
We're gonna physically emphasize it.
And again, I'm not saying you're wrong because of this. I'm saying this is why, to me, it's not an inconsistency. This is why, to me, it's consistent with its own rules and style.
Yeah.
But again, if you've got something that may be consistent, like DC Marvel House style, and they do something weird, like a weird body part, and I'll even throw you a bone, Superman's neck coming out further than his face in All-Star Superman, like, I'll agree with you on that.
Yeah, it's bad. Yeah.
But this, what I like most about it, I think, is that it kind of makes its own rules. It doesn't follow anything else.
It mostly looks really cool. It succeeds in as much as it is visually pleasing throughout. Even when I look at the art and go, ugh.
Yeah.
I still like looking at it.
And I exactly had that. There's some panels you look and go, I don't know why I like this so much. And then as soon as you try and break it down, you're like, that shouldn't all work together. But it just does. And I think it's because it's consistent within itself. I think,
and it all looks a bit dirty.
Yes.
Everything looks a bit grimy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And I think that's a really hard thing. I think that's harder to convey, weirdly, in digital art, because digital art naturally has a certain polish for me.
Yeah, like a sheen. Almost.
Yes. Yeah. And I think it's much easier to make something look dirty when you have natural texture. Like the natural ink has less texture than a lot of drawing stationery, but it has a texture. Ink has a certain texture. And I think comic books tend to have a certain sheen to them.
Yeah, and I think that might even be, we don't know if that's in the original design or if it's part of like the printing process or
the scanning process.
Yeah. I think with this as well, what I especially like is that the style gives everything an almost kind of comedic vibe. So when it does, and I think that's really necessary for telling this kind of story, because if this was a realistic looking comic, there's a lot of scenes in this, even just the first 5 issues, there would be a lot more horrible.
There would be
to
pretty
read.
Grim, yeah.
But because it's comedic, there's literally points where it's like, well, guess you got to take a bite out of this corpse here. And it's just like, it's like a Looney Tunes bit almost.
And it is funny throughout.
Oh yeah, it's a very funny comic.
I think this is one of the things that I generally enjoyed about it.
Should we move on to story?
Yeah. One of the things that I generally enjoyed about it is that it had a lot of funny beats and turns.
Yes.
One that particularly got me was they were dealing with a criminal, and it took them to this massive like Russo-American telescope.
Yes.
And this senator, I believe.
Yeah.
They'd been found dead with really high blood alcohol content, a bunch of drugs, and a stomach full of half-digested chicken. He'd had a good day.
Yeah. And the FDA, them being the FDA, were like, we're only here about the chicken.
Yeah.
We don't care about everything else he overdosed. It's the chicken.
So they turn up to this space telescope that we find out the Americans are spending alone $34 million a year.
Well, the way they reveal the information is so good. It's like, how much does it cost to run this place? Like about $3 million a year?
This is what I was about to get into, yeah. So they turn up and they find a bunch of really groggy-looking scientists smoking weed, doing drugs, fucking prostitutes, and then they have the conversation. They say, this place only actually costs $3 million a year to run. We had more money that we could spend. We ran out of things to buy, and then we bought all the things that we could imagine, and then they trail off towards the end because the implication is they all just got bored and started getting super fucked up.
Yep.
And you kind of read that and you go, that is actually a really fun joke. Like, that's a really fun joke. And it ends up becoming quite a hairy situation. And it ends up being quite an important story beat for working out what's actually going on. But it is a fun joke.
Yeah.
And the first time he has to eat a body part.
Well, technically, the first time he eats a body part is on of his own accord, because I think it's they build that stuff up really well, because he basically, the first issue, they go to this speakeasy for chicken, like a secret chicken restaurant,
Where the password?
Wishbone.
Yeah.
Great. And I didn't even focus on that when that first happened, so thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, I read it and went, huh.
There's a lot of little bits that just go, huh. But they eat at this place, and he's like, and his partner's like, oh, you can't do your weird thing. Also, lovely little detail in this whole story, this whole universe. The only thing that Chew can eat, because he doesn't want the psychic readings from food, is beets.
Yeah.
And yes, he eats beets all the time. But they go in, and his partner's like, you have to order something. If you don't, they'll know you're a police officer and they'll kick you out. So he's like, what's your soup? And it's like, chicken soup. It's like, I guess I'll have that then. And then finds, because the guy who prepared it cut himself while he was preparing it.
He was bulking it out with human remains.
That as well, because the very first page is him cutting himself. So I think it's meant to be like a misdirect where it's like, when it's happening, you think, oh, it's because he cut himself. And then the later reveal. And again, great reveal that you tell in this style, it doesn't hit as dark as if it was like a photorealistic kind of comic.
Yeah.
But yeah, he finds out the guy is basically a serial killer, the chef. So they bust in the back. His partner gets a fucking meat cleaver to the face, which I forgot happened, and went, oh shit.
Yeah.
And they chase him to the back, and the guy and Chew's got him cornered, gunpoint, and he says, give yourself up. And the guy's like, I'm actually going to kill myself rather than then go back to prison or whatever. And then he does, and Chew's like, right, well, I guess he's trying to find out the names of the victims. That's his main drive, which I think is really interesting, because normally with police stuff, it's normally like, I just need to stop him, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's really interesting right off the bat. He's like, I need to find out who you've killed so I can give their families closure.
Yeah.
And it's not even explained like I just did that. Like it's subtly told. But he then...
Well, no, he does quite explicitly state it.
Okay, yeah. But it's not like he like takes a moment to like monologue about why he's doing it. He just says it as he's going, kind of thing. And then he just bites the guy as he's like bleeding out, because he knows he'll get the names. And I think that's so cool that he kind of volunteers this to the world of like, I can do this thing. And then they're like, well, you did it once, so you eat this old corpse for us and solve the murder.
It's a finger and a moldy burger, isn't it?
Yeah.
So do you know much about the American prohibition of alcohol?
I was literally made a point of, and I don't know much, but I was made a point, I was going to bring it up as this thing being an allegory for prohibition in general.
Yes.
Not just alcohol, just the I think the general topic of making something illegal, pushing it to the black market, and the effects that has. So
there are some fun stories from prohibition that have quite a lot of allegory. Well, somebody did their research on this. So there's a fun story about a prohibition, because they had a special police force to police alcohol. They just never hired enough people. You know how I know about that? How? Simpsons. Oh, fair. When they ban beer and the guy's like, when the trilby and the fucking thing. Yeah. So there was a guy who used to travel to American cities and time how long it took him to be offered a beer. And he got off the train in Chicago, got in a cab outside the station, and as the cabbie was pulling away, he offered him a beer. And again, it's similar to this, because through most of Prohibition, the prohibitionists were originally just trying to ban spirits. They weren't trying to ban beer and wine, but it ended up being swept up in this whole thing, and it became the full prohibition of alcohol. But the prohibition of alcohol was never really adhered to in a meaningful way. So you couldn't buy wine anymore, but they would sell you this like grape jelly, basically. And it had instructions on the back that literally said, don't put this in a bathtub with water and leave it for this amount of time. Do not do that, because if you do, it'll turn into wine. And they also, there was a congressman who, towards the end of the prohibition of alcohol, was like, look, this is such a farce. He went out to the media in the halls of Congress, cracked a homemade beer, and stood and drank it in Congress. And it's that same thing here, where the FDA guys are like, look, we're not going to try and stamp out all of the chicken because we know it's pointless. We're not actually policing this, but we're kind of policing it when we want to, and when we want to enforce it. And it's the same as the prohibition on narcotics in America, where it's like...
I'd say, for anyone who's still wondering, drugs won the war.
Well, yeah, but the war on drugs was a farce. And again, it was one of those things that if you were wealthy and if you were white, they weren't super bothered about you having some weed on you. But if you're black and from a poor area, you fucking know that you're going to end up in prison, right? And so these prohibitions on things end up being tools that powerful people can use to target communities that they want to criminalize. And it's the same thing with this chicken shit. Like, you're seeing those same machinations, and they've done a really good job of weaving that into the story in a way that it doesn't beat you over the head with it.
Yeah.
It's quite subtle with it.
It's very good show, don't tell here. And I've got a little more to say on that
There's
subject.
A lot of tell, though.
I was going to get into that. I was just say before that, the show, I think, is very good at the start, where they're staking out the van and they've got the goggles that see through people and highlights chicken as like the predator heat vision thing. But there's a guy walking along and they're like, and Chew, who's like a hardliner on this whole thing, he's like, they see his brother. He's like, yeah, your brother's got some chicken. And he's like, well, we should arrest him. And his partner's like, dude, he's your brother. Like, just let him be.
His brother, by the way, who got fired from his TV cooking show for having a on-air tirade about the fact that this avian flu was fake.
Yeah. But they see like another guy who's just, they see some other guy who's just got like a portion or whatever, and Chew's like, yeah, we should get him. And guy's like, it's a little bit, like, we're here for the big ones, like, don't worry about the little portions, whatever. And I think it's that same allegory of like turning the other way on smaller amounts to like what was meant to be the intended thing. It was like, we're not going after little people, like we want the distributors and that kind of thing.
And it's the same thing, because what they say is when they see that guy walking with the chicken in his bag, they're like, 2 wings and a thigh cooked, let him go. And then when Chew's brother comes on, Chew's like, this guy's got a whole bag, it's all raw.
Yeah.
And that's the difference. It's a distributor and a consumer. If you're buying cooked chicken, you're probably not selling it to someone.
Yeah. That's that shitty thing where it's like, you passed a joint to a person next to you. It's like, you're a dealer. It's like, no, but come on.
Yeah.
But I like they were showing like the idea within this already, like they tell you like, chicken's illegal in this world, and you're like, fucking hell, what? And then they go, but these guys, they kind of they enforce it in a way, but not like strictly. So you have to like be grounded in that kind of real world version of it, of this ridiculous thing, this ridiculous like concept that they're starting with.
I mean, there's no more ridiculous than weed being illegal, is it?
No, and this gets way more ridiculous in the later issues. Let me tell you that. I might give you some hints as to what happens at the end of the.
Cool. Yeah, spoil it for me. I don't care.
We'll get to that at the end. Show don't tell. I made a point of, I want to talk about this. I think this is a really interesting example of a really unique version of show don't tell here. I think it does a lot of show really well, and it also does a lot of tell, which in a lot of other ways would be bad.
There's so much exposition.
There is, but...
At the start of every issue.
Yes.
At the start of every single issue. At the start and end of every issue.
Yeah.
There is a whole page dedicated to exposition.
Yeah, and here's why I like it, right?
Okay.
Here's why I excuse it as to most others. This comic is telling you in a way where it knows it's telling you. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
It's literally like, by the way, here's some information.
It's kind of similar to the way that early Deadpool writers did it.
Yeah. And loads of comics.
Where there's a bit of humor injected in the exposition. Same as that Tom King Supergirl comic I really like.
Yeah.
Where the exposition is just humorous enough that it gets a free pass.
It's not even like, I agree that it's humorous. It's not the humorous aspect that gives a pass for me. It's the fact that it's just so boldly doing it. It's not trying to hide it as exposition.
So
Do you know what I mean?
Saying it from its chest.
Yeah, it's just like, here's some information we're telling you up front, right?
Really similar, weirdly, to Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Yeah.
Where it gave you character introductions.
Yeah.
Because that's often what it's doing, is introducing characters. And it gives you the introduction and a bio next to a nice full frame drawing of the character, right?
Yeah.
And I didn't hate it in Scott Pilgrim.
See, I like it because, like I said, it's just boldly doing it. And when I don't like it is when a writer is trying to pass it off as show, if you know what I mean. So, like, prime example, this is probably going to be my example for at least the next year. Go back to bloody Creature of the Black Lagoon, Gilman. Remember when the character was literally talking aloud to herself to give the reader exposition, while sneaking around a enemy, a fucking cartel base or whatever, right? When it does stuff like that, it's like, oh, we're not telling you. The character's just talking to themselves out loud, sneaking around a cartel hideout.
I'm going to be honest with you. I've pushed Gilman, Son of Gilman, all the way to the bottom of my consciousness.
That's fair enough. I'm still angry about it. But
are you still salty about it?
It's a really good example of like what I don't like, or like poor execution. Like that's why I've kind of got it saved in my head. And again, as opposed to this, the comic as entire exposition is just going, by the way, here's some information. And you go, okay. Like, it's not trying to be like, ooh, like they just happen to the character called their brother, hey bro, like, you know, bollocks like that.
Yeah.
It's not trying to hide that it's telling you the information. And that's what I appreciate. It's just literally saying, here it is. It's not a character narrating to themselves. You remember the whole, every Marvel thing starts with like God, things have been crazy since that dragon attacked me last week, but the good thing I managed to beat it. Now I'm just trying to get back to, all that bollocks. It's literally just a box.
Gotham is such a dark city.
Yes. It's just a box with some pictures and going, here's some information. And it's like character introductions, like you said. It's also, by the way, food psychic stuff. Cinegraphs. Like, here's what that is, so you know it from the start.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, like, thank you for telling this information so I can understand this crazy comic.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's a really unique balance of, I think there's really good show. There's a bit in the 5th issue where it's doing that really upfront telling you, and it's telling you about Mason Savoy and a bit of his backstory.
Yeah.
And while it's telling you it, it says he's got a deep, he sounds like he's passionate about finding out what happened with the bird flu and the chicken ban. And as it's telling you that, and that he has a deep interest in it, the picture accompanied with it is him holding a woman on the floor while people are like dying around him in the street.
Yeah.
So it's telling you he's really invested emotionally, and here's a vague idea of why.
Yeah.
But then it's still, even then, giving you just enough to infer the story.
Yeah. It's
not told you his wife died and that's why he's really like, it's telling you and showing you in both good ways.
Yeah.
Do I make sense with that?
I think so. Just about.
That's what I appreciate about it.
Yeah.
And again, it's not treating you like a child. It's just like, here's the information, and now let's get on with the story.
Yeah, it's quite curt.
Yeah. And it helps it's funny when it's doing it as well. Like, one bit, introduce a character, a potential love interest of the main character.
Yeah.
A woman who, by the way, the whole food psychic thing.
Oh, I like her thing. Yeah. Her thing's fun.
I should tell you now, like, one fun thing about the whole comic as you get through, by the end, there's about at least like 20 or 30 different types of food psychic powers.
Oh,
and
really?
she's another one. So this woman, she's a writer for a magazine. She writes about food, and her power is that she can write in a way that people read her description of food and literally experience the food as if they were eating it.
The fun thing is that she's gotten bored of it, and so now she only writes about places with foul food. And you see streets lined with people all of having thrown up on themselves because they've tasted awful, wormy, rancid food. So she seeks out places with D health ratings, which I think is the lowest you can get in America.
Must be F, surely.
You go up the scale, not down.
No, A is best.
Oh, is A the best?
Yeah, I think F is fail and D is
yeah,
probably
and then,
like...
but in England, 1 is the worst.
Right, yeah.
In England, 5 is the best, and 1 is the worst. So we go down the scale, they go up it.
Yeah, in different metrics. They go by the school grading system or whatever. We're just 5 out of 5. If it's 5, it's all good.
And if it's 1, they make the best kebabs.
Probably. I've had a few occasions where I've like enjoyed a restaurant or whatever, and then found out it's got like a 2 or something. I'm like, oh, that's a bit too low for me.
There is a spot in Norwich. That I had been ordering pizza from for maybe a decade. And I'd never been in, right? I'd never been in. And I'd been ordering pizza there. And to be honest with you, it was a roll of the dice as to whether or not it was going to give me the shits. But I loved this pizza. They used to do 2-for-1 pizzas, man. It was phenomenal.
Are you about to be surprised? Are you about to reveal your surprise for their health rating, despite the 50-50 diarrhea experience?
Yeah, I should have known. But I'm also a little bit lactose intolerant. So it's like, you know, I roll the dice whenever I eat cheese. And then one day I was with an ex-girlfriend, not the current girlfriend.
Yep.
And she took me into this kebab spot, and I was like, I'm not fucking eating from here. This is grim. She looked at me and she was like, Jamie, you order from this place weekly. And I looked up at the sign and I was like, no, it can't be.
Ruined the illusion.
Yeah. Do you know what the worst thing is? I continued to order from there for years. They stopped. They changed their menu recently, and I've not been able to go back. It's been really upsetting. I've not been able to bring myself to do it.
They made the menu more safe, and you were like, nah, I don't want this.
Yeah, no, I want that fucking dicey beef.
I want a Russian roulette my pizza. Thank you very much. We were talking about the woman.
Amelia.
Yes. And again, another little bit of like a fun way to just tell you some information is telling you about this woman and her power and how it works, everything. And then just right at the end of that section, it just goes, by the way, choose in love with her. And you're like, oh, like it's the way that's just like, oh, by the way, like here's another bit of information.
No, it tells you, so you meet her and then it tells you Chew is about to fall in love and then you find out about her.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because when he reads her articles, he tastes the food without experiencing his own powers.
Which is a great way of like this weird system in this world of like connecting to people and making them like good for each other kind of thing.
Yeah.
Especially that issue as well. You're saying about like the like grossness of some of the panels and stuff.
Yeah.
Just loads of people being sick like on themselves.
Yeah.
Which again, if it was a more realistic looking comic, would have been like, you know, gross, obviously.
Are you vomit squeamish?
Nah, not especially, no.
Are you poo squeamish?
I've luckily not been in enough scenarios to know if I am or not.
You have a dog.
Oh, dog shit doesn't count.
Oh, it does. I don't like dog poo.
To be fair, I've got a smaller dog, so it's a lot easier to deal with.
Yeah, no, the size of the poos those dogs do, mate. They're huge. Do you not find as well when he's like excited or he's at the end of a walk and he's had a bit of exercise, his get runnier?
I've not noticed that, no.
Dog poos do. When they're excited or they've just been exercised, they become a little bit less firm. And there's nothing worse than like a massive, not firm dog shit.
Well, if you didn't know you're getting this education today, you're welcome.
Oh, have you ever changed a nappy?
No, luckily.
So changing baby nappies, right? If there's any parents listening, you'll know this.
By the way, if this is your first episode, we don't normally talk about shit on the podcast.
We do quite a lot, actually.
Only this week and last week, and those are very unique scenarios.
No, there was another episode where I went into detail about a time I shit myself, I swear.
That was last week.
Was that last week? Fair.
Yeah.
So baby poo, right? And this is important information for any of our listeners who are going to have children. You need to know this. When you're changing a baby's nappy, a baby that is being fed either formula milk or breast milk, the poo is fine, right? Like the poo, it doesn't really smell of anything. I've heard stories of parents like accidentally wiping a bit off their shirt and eating it. Like it just doesn't make a difference. It's not really poo.
And if you didn't know this podcast would be a gross one, the subject was about a guy who eats corpses to solve crime. So it's in that, if ever there was an episode, this is the one to do.
Ryan, there is a significant portion of a toddler's life, right, where they are eating solid food, but they're still in nappies. And then you are dealing with a nappy full of actual shit. Like milk poo is fine because they're just shitting out milk, right? And there's something about particularly breast milk where it's so natural and it just goes through and it's fine. It doesn't smell bad. But when you have got a toddler that has not told you they need their fucking nappy changed and they have sat down in a poo that is comprised of like a McDonald's breakfast or something, it is the most disgusting experience.
Well, I think this is going to be the most prominent use ever of the back to the comic phrase.
No, I need your comment on this. I need to know how this anecdote has made you feel. Newborn babies, their poo's green.
I think I'm just going to edit this whole bit out.
No, you can't. You're not allowed. I'm going to call back to it.
I know, I edit those out as well.
No, yeah, there's going to be so many.
I've got enough to make a podcast out of this, to be fair.
If you threaten to edit out, I'm just going to talk about nothing but baby poo.
Okay, I'll leave it in. So, back to the comic.
Don't wink at me.
I didn't wink at you at all.
Don't you dare. I will quit this podcast and you'll have to do it with the dog.
Hey, listen, I actually am winking at him. That's the fun part.
It's not fun.
It's very fun.
It was that was the most useful piece of information that's ever been disseminated on this podcast.
What are people meant to do with that information?
Either not procreate, which I wouldn't recommend because we need a new generation of humans to continue the species. Or if you are going to procreate, make sure the person you're going to procreate with is cool with poo so they can deal with more of the nappies.
I feel like that'd be a prerequisite anyway. I suppose there's a lot of blokes that are like, I've never changed a nappy. It's like, oh, you're a bad dad.
You're just a shit parent.
Well, congratulations. Thanks for telling us all.
Yeah, I don't even know my kids' names.
So, back to the comic.
I think you've engaged with it sufficiently enough that I'll allow that. Yeah.
I'm glad you're pleased.
I'm not pleased, but I'm begrudgingly moving on.
Fantastic. I'll take begrudgingly. What do you think of, I thought this interesting, the character and the dynamics of him and the other characters, in the sense that I realized kind of reading this partway through, Chew does not have any of the kind of characteristics of a protagonist that you would root for, or, you know what I mean? Like, be interested in, if that makes sense.
You know what it reminds me of? When you've got a toddler.
I knew that was coming.
I think he does. He reminds me, weirdly, of the chap in Fight Club who Tyler Durden lives inside the brain of. That wasn't very well constructed.
No, I know what you mean, though, yeah.
To me, he's the perfect everyman protagonist.
Yeah, I see your point. I hadn't actually thought of it that way.
Despite him being exceptional in his powers.
Yeah, I think it's probably more the powers, I suppose. And to be fair, like, he's obviously like a good guy, because in the first issue, he's goes to these lengths to help these families find closure, the victims' families find closure and stuff. So it tells you immediately, like, he's got a good moral kind of code. I think it's interesting that he's just like such a kind of curmudgeon through all of it.
Yeah.
But then you can't, when you think about it, and it doesn't explicitly tell you this really, the fact that he can only eat beets is probably a good enough reason for someone to be like pissed off most of the time, or just generally in a bad mood.
I mean, he sort of fits into the archetype of the reluctant hero. He's almost a Bilbo.
Oh yeah, but normally those reluctant heroes are like nice, or do you know what I mean? Like normally they're like got a good thing going on, and that's why they don't want to go on the adventure, or you know what I mean? Like, or they're sometimes they're a bit like that. He's a badass with a heart of gold, and yes, the old Family Guy joke was like, "Stay away, I'll stab you." It's like that guy gave his whole paycheck to orphans or whatever.
Yeah.
But normally there's that kind of balance of like, oh, he's really cool and standoffish, and then he slowly lets it, like Vagabond, like that kind of character. Yeah. But Chew is thoroughly unlikable to be around for most part. And also everyone doesn't like him as well, including his new boss who just hates him for seemingly no reason.
His partner liked him.
Yes, but he's also an arsehole as well. So it's interesting dynamic they have
to varying degrees. Yeah, I don't know. I'm inclined to disagree. I think he's sort of fits the archetype of a protagonist.
I agree with you on that part. It's just, again, it's rare you get like a main character who's just like irritable and annoyed by everyone, and like it's a bit kind of, what's his name? Is it Holden Caulfield from bloody Catcher in the Rye?
Have you read Catcher in the Rye?
I was forced to read it in high school, and I was really against it. Like, I hated it.
I don't like Catcher in the Rye.
Yeah.
I openly revile it.
But that main character is basically a whiny teenage angsty kid who just comes off as annoying most of the time, which is the point of the book.
It's
I
absolutely.
get it. Yeah.
If you get past the age of 15 and still identify with Holden Caulfield, you have not matured well as an adult.
Yeah, exactly. And but again, getting a little bit of that from Chew.
I don't think Chew's that obnoxious. I think the thing with Chew is he's irritable, but he's not obnoxious.
Tell you what, you find out later as well. Give you a little bit later. His entire family can't stand him as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, not just his brother, who is there on opposite sides of this whole chicken thing. The entire family just like, oh, you again. Like,
I love the fact that a valid sentence in this is on opposite sides of this whole chicken thing.
Yep.
They are on opposite sides of the war on chicken. So right, okay, so Chew's family don't like him.
Yes.
Is there a particular reason for that?
They just find him off-putting.
Just find him off-putting.
Though there are like deeper reasons as well, which I can't accurately recall now. I know there's like a bunch of other stuff as well. And there are some really interesting dynamics, especially between him and his brother as well. Like that kind of evolves and changes as we get through everything as well.
Yeah.
But I found it interesting that, again, we're following character. We're rooting for a character who is just annoyed all the time. And there's going to be loads of examples of that as well. But it's just interesting seeing it here.
Yeah.
He's not overly capable. He is a good detective. You see that when he kind of gets to work on stuff. Like he is hired initially for this, like, we just need you to eat the corpses and tell us who murdered them and that kind of stuff. But when you get in between those things, he is actually like doing good follow-up and good investigation and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think he's quite effective in his role. I think he's quite good at his job.
It helps that he's got this Mason guy who is like the same as him as well.
Yes. Although his powers are less pronounced, we find out, don't we?
Yeah. He's like, oh wow, you're a lot stronger than I thought, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that it has a little bit of that, was it like the manga, like chosen, it's not just manga, but that chosen one element of a protagonist, like, oh, you're the best wizard, actually. Like that old chestnut.
You can smell the line of the sword the best.
Manga examples, smell the line of the sword, Vagabond's just really good at killing people, slam dunk. He's surprisingly good at basketball, was it? Or was he not very good, but he just wanted to be on the team?
I can't remember.
We should probably remember that one. But Pokemon, really good Pokemon trainer.
Well, no, because Ash is actually pretty mid for most of it.
But he does tame Pikachu, who's like pretty, like, wild, isn't he?
Well, yeah, because Pikachu's a pretty high level. Have we had this conversation on the podcast?
I think we have. I think we had it on the Pokemon episode.
Yeah,
Second episode ever.
So Pikachu, like, busts out a pretty high level move for a Startermon. Like, that Pikachu's not level 5.
So there you go. So even though Ash is, like, really rough around the edges and unexperienced, he's got a lot of natural talent for Pokemon training and stuff.
Yeah, but then he gets a slightly spicier Pokemon than Pikachu, and he's not does not deal with Charizard very well.
Yeah, he's not first day in basketball and he's already Michael Jordan. Like, but he's got that raw talent. Like, and that's it's within that kind of
think
archetype.
Ash was a bad example,
Maybe,
if I'm honest with
enough.
you.
But
I think Ash was a poor... I think if you'd stuck with Musashi, we wouldn't have gone down this avenue.
Fair enough. and Harry Potter's a big one as well.
Fuck Harry Potter.
Fair enough.
Fucking Harry Potter. This might be the first time we've mentioned... No, it's not the first time we've mentioned Harry Potter.
No, you've expressed your disdain previously, which I'm all for. Yeah.
Yeah, good. I'm glad I got it on record.
But at least, yeah, he's definitely got a little bit of that, like, you're the best Sibograph, was it?
Sibograph,
yeah, sure. You're the best one I've ever seen. And, and it's interesting as well that he's really good at a thing that he hates doing. I think that is a fun juxtaposition.
In fairness, though, there's only 3 of them, and one of them's out in Russia.
Yep.
So we don't really have much of... We only have Mason as a reference point, don't we? As does Mason.
Yes. That is one thing I was going to get onto as well. The little bits of foreshadowing. Like, as someone who has read it all, I'm reading this and I'm seeing little nods to things that I know are happening later.
Yeah.
So I'm enjoying them from that aspect. Did you get like a sense of like intrigue of like, oh, that a little mention of a thing and is that going to be paid off later and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I mean, you were looking for it.
Yes. And that's why I'm asking you, because like, I know what's coming. I don't know if it had the same effect on a new reader or not.
Well, obviously, I don't know what's coming. I kind of saw the avian flu thing being a bit of a misdirect. I kind of clocked that this may be an engineered disease, or that the American government might be overstating it as a tool for state control or whatever.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
Yeah, this is it. So I kind of clocked that might be the case.
But that's more big picture stuff. Like that. I mean, like the example you made, the one's like, there's only 3 registered Sibographs in the world. It's like, you, me, and this other guy.
Yeah.
And it's like, who's that third one? Like,
yeah, no, yeah. So yeah, I assumed I was going to meet him at some point.
Yes. There's one part where
why are they all dudes?
It's just these first three. Like,
Right.
it's most of them. There are loads of female characters who have, like, I mean, prime example, the writer.
Are there
woman.
any female cybergraphs?
Yes.
Oh, cool. So there's more than 3.
Oh yeah. There's more cybergraphs specifically, and there's like 20 different versions of food psychic power things.
Are there any particularly weird ones?
Yes.
How weird does it get?
I can't remember.
Are there any of them that are weirdly sexual? Because I bet there are.
I don't think so, actually, no.
Oh, they didn't take it there.
I mean, I might not. If it is, it wasn't like a big story plot point.
Well, give us some of the weird ones.
The cybergraphs are like the main ones. Like they're like they're like the Jedis. Do you know what I mean? Like they're like the entire story revolves around these characters.
They're the
and their
airbenders.
abilities. Yeah, exactly. They're the avatars.
Yeah.
But there's more than one.
Yeah.
Let me go on the Wikipedia because there was like a list of them, and I'll see if any of like jog my memory. Because again, there are definitely a load of like crazy ones. Go to the bottom of the list because that's where the craziest ones will be.
Okay. Well, not necessarily, and they might be at the top of the list.
It is a good one, right? It's not the craziest one, but it's a fun one, right? I don't remember this at all. I'm going to try and pronounce the name of it. It's a made-up name, so if I get it wrong, doesn't matter. Viracerantheist. Something like that.
Viracerantheist.
Yeah. Able to get stronger by eating what? What do you think it is? Guess.
Chicken.
Nope. It's really, what would you eat to make you stronger?
Fucking
it's spinach. It's
they Popeyed one of them.
The character's unnamed, but he's referred to as Sailor Man.
Oh, fuck.
All right, you want a crazy one?
Does he look like Popeye?
It's just a written thing. I assume
Find him.
No.
Find him.
You find him.
No.
Well, fuck you.
I'm reclined.
That's your excuse for everything.
Yeah, I'm horizontal.
All the time.
As often as I can be.
Yeah. Oh, here's
Are you
a fun
not?
one. No, you can see I'm not. Okay,
well, no, but
this is one you'll go into what you requested, right? A aeroskibopictaros.
Can they fly?
No, a literal food pornographer able to take pictures of food that inspire erotic feelings in the viewer. There you go.
If you were going to be aroused by any food, what would it be? What's the sexiest food?
I mean, the easy answer is one that looks like a naked body pie, isn't it? But I feel like that's like a cop-out.
Yeah, what? So something phallic?
I mean, you jump straight to phallic.
Or something vaginal.
Well, is it even more just like was it like peaches or melons? Or those are like the quickest jump to, aren't they?
Right, I mean, the ones that we use as emojis for sexual organs.
Yeah, sure.
I think it would be something Asian.
Well, we just discovered something about you.
Well, no, food.
Yeah, still.
Yeah, like...
Do you want me to leave that in?
Fuck it. We're talking about the food we find sexy. You know, like maybe some kind of like spicy stuff in broth kind of vibe.
I mean, if it's a hot broth, you definitely don't want to get aroused by that.
Well, you don't want to fuck it, but...
I feel like this is going down a bad trail.
Because we're not talking about what would be the best food to actually have sex with, because obviously...
Yeah, visually arousing.
Yeah, like 2000s American cinema taught us that it's a warm apple pie, obviously.
Not a hot one.
Or what was it in Rick and Morty? A Ziploc bag of lentil soup? Is that what Morty was?
I know, I can't remember exactly, but I vaguely remember the joke. Okay.
No, it wasn't Rick and Morty. It was
Big Mouth.
Big Mouth.
Yeah, two Ziploc bags in the pillow. Or whatever. But that wasn't. They weren't aroused by. Yeah, that wasn't aroused by the food. That was use of the food.
Yeah.
In yes.
Yeah. No, it's not what food do you actually want to copulate with. It's what is the sexiest food.
Right.
I think this is important stuff.
Yeah. Just upon the spot, I cannot recall. Again, my answer is the most obvious. Basic ones.
I'd never thought of it either. My answer was also not particularly well formed.
Well, luckily this still makes for good listening, I hope, but maybe not.
There's only one way to find out.
Also, write in, tell us which food you find sexy.
Yeah, definitely. What's that guy's name? The guy who writes in a lot.
He's got another comment at the end, so I'll read it at the end.
Is he commenting on every episode? Did he do 16 comments?
No.
Oh.
No.
Leon.
Obviously, we know which one's more influential of the two.
Right, look.
So, I mean, last little bit.
I've really thrown you, haven't I?
I was going to say, last little bit, I do like when the violence in this, it sometimes does get, like, not even serious, but, like, more serious than it's normally played off as. Specifically, bit where Mason bites off Chew's ear in issue 5.
Yeah.
Because that's like, there's a lot of violence here, which is almost like a bit comical, a bit like Looney Tunes-esque. And that's like a real, like, that looks like it looks brutal, looks like it hurt. And then afterwards for Mason to, so for anyone who still hasn't read it, is Chew discovers that Mason is actually someone who killed one of the murders they're investigating. And it's this reveal that Mason is trying to find the truth of this whole thing, and he's infiltrated the FDA, and now he's got to go on the run because Chew's such a hard line, like, you're a murderer and I've got to take you in.
But he takes Chew's ear as mutually assured destruction, doesn't he?
Yeah, and the way that he's standing over Chew at the end with a bit of his ear that he's bit off, bloody fucking Mike Tyson style.
Yeah.
Even more than that Mike Tyson.
He gets the whole ear.
Yeah. And he's just holding it like, and if you come after me, I will turn this into a proper Hannibal Lecter. He's like, I'll turn it into a nice soup, and I'll have that soup, and then I'll know all your family and friends, and I'll know how to hurt you, basically. Yeah. And Chew's just writhing in pain on the floor.
Yeah.
And that's like, that's a real kind of a brief showing of like how this comic actually does kind of more deeper, serious stuff as it goes on.
Yeah.
It never loses its vibe. Like, it's always a bit jovial and stuff, but it kind of gets you invested in the characters. And then it does these plot points which actually kind of resonate. And I remember reading it going like, oh shit, like I'm actually like really invested in this wacky concept of a comic, you know?
Yeah.
And I think this is a really good like brief showing of like how they can do that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. Yeah, I did like that ending. I really liked the ending of issue 5.
I still like the Mason character.
Yeah, he's fucking great. He's
a fun character.
He's so cool, man. Like, Guy Ritchie, Brian Blessed, who is going to blow this chicken thing wide open, whether it kills him or not. He's great.
And should have probably mentioned this now, but the fight scene.
Oh, he's so handy, isn't he?
And it's told really well. Like, it looks good. Every like individual strike. You know?
Mason is proper tasty.
Yeah.
He's good in a scrap.
My note was literally that bit where Mason does cry on a bunch of guys.
Yeah. I'm realizing now why I like Mason so much. Kind of looks like me as well, doesn't he?
Should we if we ever do cartoon avatars of ourselves for videos or whatever, should I just send someone a picture of Mason, a picture of you, say, make this real person look like in the style of this comic person?
I mean, I don't even think you need to do that. I think if you just sent them a photograph of me, they'd look at me and go, that's probably what they'd come up with. Maybe shorter.
Yeah, but in this style, like I say, like we want the hat with hiding the eyes completely and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
Totally. And he's always in a tweed jacket as well, which I identify with.
Yeah. I'll send you a picture of you in a tweed jacket and I'll be like, leave the clothes the same, just make it look like this.
Most photographs of me, I'm in a tweed jacket, if I'm honest with you.
That or a robe.
Or a robe. I think
poncho.
Or some form of big flowy thing or a tweed jacket.
Yes.
It oscillates, doesn't it? I either look like a dad or like I'm about to join a cult.
More like a bit Brian Blessedian vibe, you know, that kind of thing. Like a bit whimsical, a bit jolly, bit joyful, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Someone who will sit and read a book, but also like have a pint and laugh the loudest in a pub.
Yeah.
Well, if you want to know more...
I've become a right shut-in recently, though.
Well, we're getting older. That just happens, doesn't it?
I mean, I'm getting a real insight into what the rest of your life must look like, where I'm just like, I don't want to be around people.
Welcome. We are really a Chew and Mason kind of team, aren't we?
I think so.
Maybe why we like this comic so much.
What, because it's a real sort of...
It's us if we were in this world and we were both cybergraphs, basically.
Do you think you'd be that, like, hard line in your... You would be as well, wouldn't you?
I think if I had to eat beets all my life, maybe. Like, that'd probably drive me a bit crazy.
You're a fan of a restrictive diet, though.
Yeah, but within my choice. Like, if I can choose from everything and I make what my diet or whatever is, then I'm happy with that. If I'm forced to only eat certain things, I was like, this sucks. Like, I have no choice in it. There's a great what if I heard on another podcast, which I'll get you a brief answer. Either it's a classic would you rather kind of thing. It's kind of phrased simply. Either you have to kill someone in the world, you don't know who it is, like you press a button and someone in the world dies, or you have to do a porridge year, and it's where you can only eat porridge and water. You can't add anything to it. It's just porridge. You can't eat anything else. If you want to eat, it's porridge and water.
1 calendar year.
Yes. You can pick when you just have to do 365 days from whatever day you want. So you can time it however suits you best.
So I can avoid leap years.
Sure, yeah.
Oh, and if you're eating porridge for a year, that extra day is me. Yeah, I think I'd do the porridge.
I think I would. I think...
Do you?
Yeah, I think So my loophole that I would try and... Because I've heard this phrase. I haven't created it. My loophole is you can't add any other food to it. It's the only other food you can eat. Yeah, seasoned salt, that kind of thing. And you're not going to get you're not going to fix the whole problem, are you? But at least you could, change it that way.
The thing is, though, right? I think in that instance, limitations would be the mother of invention.
You'd be the master of different porridges after a while.
Yeah, so for breakfast, you'd have a smaller portion of porridge that was really heavily sweetened, so you got a lot of glucose in it to give you, and then maybe towards the end of the day you'd make a different porridge that was salty.
Yeah. I suppose we should have two answers. Do we have our loophole answers? Yeah, we'll do it. If we have the literally, you cannot add anything to it.
It's just even if it's just oats and water,
yeah,
I would do it. The question that I'm going to bat back to you is, because obviously I think we're both erring on the side of porridge.
I mean, when you think about it, though, when you start to think about it, it's a lot of people die in the world every day that you have nothing to do with. What's one more? Yeah,
but imagine if it was your mum.
That's the Twilight Zone ending, isn't it? That's the you press a button, but it's actually your loved one.
It's a 1 in 8 billion chance, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's what's worse odds than the lottery.
It's worse odds than almost anything.
Exactly.
However, I don't think I could take those odds. I think a year worth of eating porridge is still better than those odds. My question to you is, what would be your first meal after your year of porridge?
Probably a porridge. Don't want us to change things up too quickly.
See, this is the thing that I think would happen with you, particularly because you are a creature of habit. I think after about 6 months, you'd really start to like the porridge.
Well, it depends. From a medical stance, would you be I need to get some other shit in,
You would have a scurvy.
Yeah, I think you'd need to do I think you would literally need to do a slow build to normal food.
Yeah.
I don't think you could go fucking steak dinner or lasagna immediately. I think your body would go in shock almost.
You'd have to spend a month.
Sick. You'd have to spend.
You'd be your gut flora would be so heavily affected. I think you'd have to on the run up, the first maybe month.
You got to get to day 365 first.
After 365, you've then got a month where you're just I'm very lightly seasoning the porridge now.
Bit of honey,
a little bit of honey
to start with.
Maybe some fruit.
Yeah.
I often. So I'm kind of gradually making. Well, I did it years ago, and then I kind of relapsed. Oat milk.
Oh yeah, I'm on oat milk.
So oat milk is just really.
I wonder if you'd be allowed oat milk.
Well,
that's a game changer if you are.
All oat milk actually is very weak porridge.
Yeah.
But so when you see somebody making porridge with oat milk instead of cow's milk,
oats to your oats.
They're making slightly stronger porridge with very weak porridge.
Yeah.
I also think it's hilarious that we have found a way to market weak porridge to people as a lifestyle product.
What, as in add porridge to your porridge?
No. Cow's milk is no longer trendy because it is a bit weird.
Yeah.
And it's, people want to be vegan or vegetarian or whatever. People want less dairy in their lives these days. One of the options was, what if we make really weak porridge and then we bottle it and sell it to people? And people in their millions have gone, yeah, give me the weak porridge to put in my coffee. It's delicious.
I mean, at the end, the main thing when it comes down to it is it the same color and consistency as milk?
Yeah.
From the naked eye. Obviously, if you compare them or weigh them, they're going to be different. But
and I totally fuck with it, don't you?
Yeah.
It's great.
Got it in my fridge right now. Yeah.
Have you seen the new brand that's popping up? Because Oatly was the brand for a long time, wasn't it?
We might be now turning this into the oat podcast. What's your last bit on oat milk? What are you going to say?
Well, because there was Oatly.
Yeah.
And then Oatly had some the vegans got really upset with Oatly because they give all of their byproduct to the meat industry as feed. A lot of their byproduct goes off.
Antithetical, innit?
Yeah, a lot of their byproduct ends up as pig feed. And so there's a new brand that just popped up in a really funky carton that it fucks, it slaps. It's really good stuff. I can't remember the name of it. But there's a new oat milk in town, Ryan, and it's very exciting.
I get a couple of different ones depending on what shop I'm in. There's one I can't remember the name of, but it's got a picture of.
I've drawn you straight back into the oat milk talk.
Last bit on the oat milk. There's a brand that has it's a woman wearing like a chicken costume. Like that's the logo, and I can't remember what it's called, but that's fine. Like that's a good oat milk to get, in my opinion. So I'm definitely going to timecode that off as the oat milk tangent or the oat tangent or the porridge tangent.
The porridge tangent.
Yeah.
Because we've established oat milk is just porridge.
Yes, just very weak porridge. So, like I said, we did have a couple more comments from a super fan. I think
is it Leon again?
It is Leon.
Hey mate, how are you?
So, and I'm not like they've left some comments on the most recent one, the Return to the Ultimate Universe. I'm not going to read them all like verbatim, like they're there if you want to see them. But
how many comments did they leave?
2 comments.
Oh,
yes, exactly. Maybe that was the halfway
8
point.
comments.
Don't listen to him. But they basically just said that they loved the Ultimate stuff. They were sorry that the symbiote event that they liked ruined my Daredevil run that I was enjoying.
Cool.
So thank you for your concern. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I did get over it after. Well, I'm not fully over it, but I don't have hate in my heart for the symbiote storyline or people who made it. So, but thank you for your thank you for expressing concern. And yeah, they really liked Marvel comics. Apparently, not much of a DC guy. But, they're going to be getting them. And they did ask as well. They said they would like us to do more manga. Or would we be open to reading more manga?
I'm always up for more manga.
We do have plans in the works for manga. We do actually we're meant to be organising a guest to come on to actually talk about manga.
One of my buddies.
If that actually happens. If we can make it happen. But yeah, it'll always get to a point where we'll read some manga. You'll probably read a manga, and then one week we won't have anything in, and you'll go, can we do this manga I'm reading? That's a very likely scenario.
The way I did for Vagabond.
Exactly, yeah. So, manga is that we'll do it just enough that we can technically say we cover it. But also, when mangas come in like 300 issues and still going, it's like we can only really dip our toe and be like, these first 5 issues almost got the story going.
Yeah, it's
and
hard,
fair enough,
isn't it? Like, imagine doing Bleach or something.
Exactly, yeah. So,
and we tried to do another manga.
Yeah, the Lost episode.
The Lost episode where it all got weird.
My favorite bit of the podcast lore, the Lost episode that we only hint to.
Yeah.
I don't think we've ever explicitly said what it was and why we couldn't do it. But it's
Have we not?
I don't think so. And I want to do the little bits of information that people have to piece together, like the big war with all the string on it.
200th episode reveal. 200th episode.
Yeah, we'll say what it was and why we didn't feel. We'll do
it for the 200th episode. We'll revisit it.
Yeah, but it's just going to be us being like, all the way through.
That was we were recording in your bedroom for that one as well.
Yeah, I just moved in and it was like a big empty room in here. So it's like, let's go in the room that has like at least like a bed to absorb some of the fucking
So we
feedback.
were just like bunched up against the corner of your bedroom wall talking about a comic book that neither of us were comfortable talking about.
And trying to like dance around it. And I will tell you a little bit of lore for maybe people want to work out the timing, whatever. What we did instead was Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong.
Oh God, yeah,
we
that
were like,
was
we
also
need to do
awful.
something else. That was a bit of fun. It wasn't horrible.
I don't remember liking it.
It was a bit of fun.
But people will come, like people in my life will come up to me and be like, "Oh, I've just started your podcast. So I listened to the episode on this thing," and I was like, did I like it?
Yeah.
Not a clue.
So it's all up in here, and it's all on the old podcast system that I've got here as well.
Do you just have a fat hard drive with like 100 odd Comic Literate podcast episodes finished on it?
External hard drive, yes. Gotta keep them separate, Gotta clear up space on the old work machine or whatever.
I'd be curious as to like what actual quantity of data we've created doing this.
I'll get some figures for you at some point. Also, Leon did say apparently they like I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it correctly, probably not, Kagurabaki, something like that. Apparently that's a manga. They recommend it. We'll have a look. See if we can something we can do. And they'll say manga be dunking on American comics in some ways. They certainly do.
I agree.
Those ways specifically being longevity. Like that's the main one, I think.
And sometimes art.
Yes, yeah. There's definitely compared to bloody Marvel and DC house style, like absolutely. The art is a lot more passionate in manga than those ones.
Yeah, I mean, again, We are so ill-educated on manga, really.
And that's why I said we're trying to get someone who's a bit more knowledgeable on the subject than we are.
I just don't know what the dynamic would be like with three of us.
Well, that's why it'd be interesting. Like a crazy episode for 1 week, you know?
Because also the other person that we're talking about bringing in is more frenetic than me.
And that's why it'd be interesting.
They're more bouncy than I am.
So I'm interested to see, would you join in their energy, or would you kind of naturally come to my side of like, bit of structure here, like, come on.
Unfortunately, I think it would set me off.
Well, we'll see.
I think it would be too stimulating for me.
Well, there's only one way to find out.
There is.
And one day we'll get that out, and you can experience what true chaos in a podcast sounds like. With me just like trying to put out fires. Like, guys, we've got to have some structure somewhere.
We also use an audio interface that only has 2 mic inputs. I think that's the main reason we haven't done it yet.
We'll get another one. Bloody made of money. Anyway, I think that's most of the podcast, is it? And thank you, Leon, for your comments. And
Leon, nice
please let us know, again, any other comics you want us to look out, talk about, or anything, or just how you're feeling about comics in general, manga.
Just to see if Leon actually makes it all the way through the episode. In your next comment, Leon, can you tell us?
You don't have to do anything. You don't have to do anything he demands of you.
I'm gonna put the same questions to him that I put to you today.
Okay, yeah.
What do you think about baby poo?
I didn't think you were going to go that one, but okay.
I had to get it in.
What is someone meant to say to that? Pro, really for it.
I had to get
really
it.
Love it.
I had to get it in the end just to save the bit from being cut. What do you think the most arousing food is?
Mm-hmm.
Or what are your thoughts on oat milk? It doesn't have to be all three. I'm just curious to see how deep into the podcast our superfan gets. So any one of the three, and I'll be satisfied.
And I say you can comment whatever your heart contents, because, you know, we don't have to listen. The fact you listen to us at all, we are immensely appreciative of. So comment at your will. So I think that's pretty much it for now. And we've run a bit longer, so I'm not going to do the fake call to action or anything. Not that I've ever done it before, but I'm not going to do it this week.
Cool.
I feel like it's a bit too late in the day to subject you.
Physically, it is quite late in the day.
It is quite late in the day. So I don't want to waste any more time by banging on about how people can write into the Comic Guillory Gmail to, you know, let us know what they think and stuff, and going into the podcast apps and rating it 5 stars and recommending it to friends, and checking out Comic Stand on YouTube, my videos on there, or the Comic Guillory TikTok where you put videos here. I don't want to waste any extra time getting into all that bollocks, you know?
Can't believe you've done this. Can't believe you've done this.
I mean, I'd say I didn't do it. I'm saying I wouldn't do it.
Can't believe you've done this.
I saved you time by not doing it.
I'm leaving.
Well, on that note, thank you, goodbye.